Hello and welcome. Joe Volpe, publisher of Corriere Canadese, North America's only Italian language daily newspaper, on behalf of Go Live TV and Corriere Media Group with today's topic. The topic is undocumented workers in Canada. And I've got with me two very special guests who have been associated with this theme since its very inception. No, they formalized the theme from many years ago. To my right, I guess as you see it, to the left, is Manuel Alexandre, who is the president of the Undocumented Workers Committee. And to my left, but to your right, is Joe Pimentel, who is the vice president and secretary general of this organization, the Undocumented Workers Committee. Now, we've talked about undocumented workers in these programs on Law and Reality. But I wanted to speak to the two people who have been most involved with this theme, at least as far as the Corriere Canadese is concerned, over the course of the last 5 years. You go back before that, Manuel.
Absolutely.
Tell me something about these undocumented
Well, we
workers.
started already in the year 2004, and exactly the purpose of that was to tell the federal government that something needs to be done towards the undocumented workers.
So, but just a second. So, Joe, what's an undocumented worker?
An undocumented worker is somebody who's come here legally, contributed to the society, and the only thing that prevents them from being Canadian or landed is a piece of paper.
And what's that piece of paper?
It's the piece of paper that allows them to become a landed resident. It's a bureaucratic process. So the only thing that prevents them from becoming fully recognized as a Canadian is a piece of paper.
Yeah, but some people think that that's illegal, right?
Illegal is one thing, but they came here legally. They're not criminals. To me, illegal strikes the sense of criminality. There's no criminality in the sense that they're continuing to undermine the society that they're living in.
They're not undermining it.
They're not undermining it. They're adding to it. They're working.
So, Manuel, I'm sorry if I go back and forth on this, but I know that, I get excited when you guys tell me about this. So, why should Canada care about these undocumented workers?
Well, I think it's very important for two things. One of them is you have people that are highly qualified on the sectors that we are needed.
Now, how do you know that?
Because we know that. We know the facts that we are shortage in a lot of skilled labor. We are shortage in a lot of professions. And Canada, especially in Ontario, we are suffering a lot because of the short labor. So this is
but how do you know that
problem.
those guys can
Well,
fill that job?
Well, for sure, they can. They are working. We have a lot of undocumented now that they are working.
So they're already there.
They're already there on the system and deducting and paying taxes. So why not giving them a chance? As you're saying, giving that piece of paper, give them something that they can continue and feel proud of this being part of this country.
So, the idea behind having immigration, I know you get excited, but I get excited about it too. But, the reason why you let people in who aren't Canadian so they can join the family of Canadians is because you look at the Immigration Act, it says they make a contribution to the general wealth of the country.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
So, but you got to prove that you can do that.
Prove that they can do what? To contribute?
That they can make a contribution.
Well, the reality is right now, Joe, that without the undocumented workers, certain segments of our economy would collapse.
Like which ones?
Well, construction,
For
one. Certain restaurants, chefs, for example, mechanics, and others. The list goes on and on, right? There's certain specialities that we do not have the numbers in-house in Canada to contribute to the growth of the Canadian economy. So much so that the last immigration proposal made by the federal government included an essential clause regarding trades, regarding people with technical backgrounds. We just don't have that skill set, or enough Canadians with that skill set, to contribute to the sustainability of the economy.
So an undocumented worker is already here, as you say. They're already filling the job that somebody says has to be filled.
Exactly.
They already demonstrate that they've integrated. They have a job. Okay, what's the problem? That
Exactly.
paper?
Well, that's the paper. That's the bureaucracy, as Joe was mentioned, and there is certain bureaucracy in there that don't want to improve the system, don't want the people that they are already contributing to the Canadian society, to the taxes, with no criminal record, and they are in there, and just because they don't speak the language, this is another important factor that the previous government, Joe, you know very well, that with the previous government, we have a lot of debates with them. Why did they implement the requirement to work in construction, to work in certain sectors, the requirement that you have to speak English at grade level 5, which is for Portuguese very, it's very hard.
Italians too, but so, you know, like I'd be tempted to say that this is beginning to take on the air of partisan political discussion.
Absolutely not. That's the furthest thing from our agenda. Our agenda is in a democratic process to engage the government to find a proactive solution to something that is concerning us. We are involved in this because we want to better people's lives.
Have you made a proposal?
We've made several proposals.
Several proposals, and Joe, just to let you know as well, we had with the previous government, so we are no partisan, with the previous government that implemented the grade level 5, we had arguments with them, Jason Kenney, with Chris Alexander, in Brampton with several contractors, where we mentioned that they have people undocumented. Can you support them? Can you give them the papers that they need?
To hire undocumented.
And they say, exactly, they say, well, you guys should not hire them. Sir, I'm running business. I have to run my business, not you, minister. I have to run my business. So they have their workers, they're paying good salary. He went, actually, Chris Alexander went a little bit further. He asked, well, how much you're paying? I'm paying high wages in there. And he goes to the minister, I will challenge you if you stay 2 hours with me, I'll pay $100 an hour. I will change you on that. So you'll find out exactly how hard it is to work in construction.
Well, but I want to say something to you, Manny, and you can jump in anytime you want, Joe. The current minister for CBSA, Canadian Border Service Agency, he says the law expressly prohibits anybody from hiring a so-called undocumented worker or counseling an undocumented worker from working on a job site. And if they do, they can be fined up to $50,000 and jailed for up to 2 years. You're telling me there's a lot of people who are defying the law?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So you're smiling as if you know some intimate.
Absolutely, so many. But Joe, here is the thing. What is the problem? If the people are working, the people are paying taxes, the people have no criminal record, just because of that piece of paper say, I don't speak English, and I'm undocumented, this is not fair. That's what we are trying to press the government.
But here's a guy who used to be in the bureaucracy. He used to be a bureaucrat.
I used to be a bureaucrat.
Okay, so is there a mechanism available to the minister to resolve this problem?
Absolutely there is. And
Right.
well, the minister has the minister's discretion in the act that allows him to say, you shall be able to stay in this country. The minister has that discretion. It's built into our system.
But there must be a sheet of paper someplace.
Of course, there's something called in Canada class.
So what does that mean?
In Canada class means they're already here.
Right.
You don't have to leave Canada to go back to Italy or Portugal or Brazil or any place else. You're here and you apply and say, I am already here. I am already contributing. I have family. I am an effective member of society.
I'm integrated.
I am integrated into Canada. They're contributing already. These people are here contributing already.
So there's this form you're saying it's called an in Canada class. Okay. So what authorizes the minister under this application? It's kind of you're telling me it's a sponsorship application.
It is a sponsorship application. And there are other applications as well.
Like?
Well, there's the standard spousal application and these dependent applications. But the application can only be put in by the individual who's actually working in the country or has contributed to the country. The spouses and the children aren't contributing. They're part of his contribution. They're participating in society. The kids go to school. The wife goes shopping and does all these other things. But it is that individual who has to apply. So there are various mechanisms in place. The trouble is that the bureaucrats will follow the regulations and rules only and will not step outside of that. That's how bureaucracy works. That's how government functions.
But Joe, but that's what we are trying to avoid, that bureaucracy. We're trying to convince the bureaucrats that they must get out of their comfortable chair and do something for the people that are building this country. That's what we are not gone yet there.
No,
we are putting so much pressure.
But you put pressure. You said you put pressure on two former ministers, Jason Kenney and Chris
Alexander,
Alexander.
and now we're putting pressure on the Ahmad Hussein as well. And we're getting nowhere.
But before Ahmad Hussein, you had John McCallum. Did you go to him?
John McCollum, yes, we did in Ottawa. I addressed John McCollum. It was just an accident that he was outside of the parliamentary. I said, sir, I'm from Brampton. I told him what I was in there for, me and another fellow, and from the Undocumented Workers Committee. I told him about the situation, the numbers that were given to permanent residents, where Portugal and Italy were at the bottom of the list. Portugal, we had about 620 during the year 2016, and Italy, they had 655 on the year 2016. And the other ethnicity, they had 25,000, 45,000, 50,000, and I said, this is a big discrepancy.
You're suggesting that there's a quota system, but we're, that excludes some of these Europeans, but that's not where this discussion
I know,
is going.
Joe, but this is part of it. That's how we started, right? This was the base of it. Let's make them aware what's going on.
What did McCallum and his government do
in
terms of addressing your issue about undocumented?
Well, they formed a committee in that in Ottawa. I was, for my surprise, I was happy that they formed a committee to start to look into these problems, the undocumented workers.
Well,
and Mr. McCallum,
who was on that committee?
Was Peter Fonseca, was Sonia Sidhu, was Sobara, was a few more.
So, so they're just names for me and the viewers.
Yeah,
well,
who
just
are names, but those are members of parliament.
Okay.
Those are members of parliament. All people that got elected. They are all in there. They were part of the committee. And then even John McCollum on a CIRV, on a radio station, a Portuguese radio station, we understand that there is a lot of undocumented problems. We are forming a committee to address those problems.
So what did they do in addressing that problem? What did they propose?
Well, they haven't done much.
No, but what did they propose to do?
Well, Manuel probably has a better understanding of what they proposed.
Yeah, so what they proposed was this. Let us go through the system. Let us find out, let us design a system. One, no criminal record. Okay, that's acceptable. Second, must be working.
Mm-hmm.
That's perfectly okay. Third, they must be deducting taxes. That's even better. And those were the main things that constructed the pilot project. Those were the main ideas.
Hold on. Now you've entered another
route. I know.
Pilot project. Now, in my mind, a pilot project suggests that this is an experimental process.
Exactly.
It's something to which we have a provisional commitment.
Exactly, John. And that provision was for the sector of construction. That's where we had a big shortage of labor. And that would address the first was the sector of construction. Second, on the second pilot project, once you have a successful first pilot project, then the success would be for mechanics, bakers, a lot of other restaurants, a lot of other professions that were not absorbed by the first pilot project.
So what did they do? Did they propose that under what is called that, as Joe indicated, an in-Canada class? Is he using humanitarian and compassionate grounds? It's like, what were the parameters that the minister suggested be utilized for this pilot project?
Well, initially it was on the grounds of humanitarian and compassionate grounds, because we're talking about people who, as part of the undocumented, as part of the pilot project, started to come forward and show their names.
Yeah.
And as a result of doing that, they began to be deported out of the country.
What?
They began to be deported out of the country. We had a commitment from a government representative to begin a pilot project.
Who's the government representative?
The government representative was Mr. Peter Fonseca. I believe he was speaking on behalf of the minister of the day. And we were thrilled to see and understood the value of a pilot project. They didn't want, we talked about the idea of amnesty. And that's an idea that everyone shies away from because it resonates negatively in the Canadian context. Amnesty means everyone, criminals, all sorts of different individuals that you don't want here in Canada. So we agreed, amnesty is not the way to go. A pilot project made sense. The pilot project they proposed was the first step in going through exercising the processes by which we could expand the pilot project into the future to include more of these people who are contributing. The important thing here is to understand, immigration has been proven to be a positive result for Canada, not a net negative. It is a positive result. All of us, save and except Native, Indigenous peoples, are all immigrants to this country.
Well, so some of this would work, on the economic side. Would probably everybody would understand in the construction sector, because I guess I've heard some of the union bosses as well say to me, we have a shortage today. Well, if you send these people back, that shortage is going to increase.
Exactly,
so that doesn't make sense.
The only time it makes sense, Joe, is when the economy slumps. And several years ago, the federal government sent packing 5,000 Portuguese families. The economy was in a slump. There was no need for these poor individuals. Could you imagine, after contributing years of your service in a trade that's needed, contributing to the economy, your kids and wife are part of the community, and you get sent home because the economy slumps. You know what? It's almost akin to a type of slavery that you bring, that we use at our discretion as a powerful country, an economic force, that we get rid of people we don't want and bring them in when we need them. Canada is not that type of country.
Well, that's tough language, for the both of you, tough language. But, since you mentioned humanitarian and compassionate grounds, I had a discussion here with a lawyer last week. I said, humanitarian and compassionate grounds. So you've got a government that presents an economic plan, an immigration plan to Parliament. And in that plan, it said 310,000 is how many we want in here. Under humanitarian compassionate grounds, now, this may shock you, maybe not. They said there's room for 3,200. So how many undocumented workers were you hoping to get under that 3,200? In a 3,200 nationwide. In Ontario, that would be, I think, about 1,280.
About 40% of the workforce comes from Ontario.
Yeah.
So 40% of those undocumented workers, or a greater number than that, are in Ontario. That's a drop in an ocean of a very sensitive and important issue.
So from a practical point of view, what happens if, the minister says, yeah, I want to go ahead and I want to bring in all of these, I want to take these undocumented workers under the applications that you guys said existed, or that McCallum said was going to be put together, and you get 1,280 people under under humanitarian and compassionate grounds. So what happens if there's a family, and in the middle of the family, you've reached the number 1,280. What happens to 1,281?
Well, that poor individual is going home, and I guess the family has to decide
you said
who.
that they're all integrated. Home is here.
No, well, the home is here. The children, for the most part, are born in Canada. They are Canadian. They are part of the Canadian system. And there are studies that show when these children go through this type of stress, they suffer post-traumatic stress disorder.
So, yeah, I don't want to play the devil's advocate, but I'm going to for a moment. The minister, in this case it would be the minister for CBSA, or Minister Hussein for immigration, is going to separate families and deport kids so that they can stick with the rule.
It's not fair, Joe, and we cannot accept that. Canada is a better country than that, and more values than that. So therefore, one of the things that I find, Joe, and the present government is defying the Supreme Court by deporting kids that they are born over here. We know the parents might be undocumented, but they're defying the federal court. And that federal court on the 10th of December 2015 said you're not allowed to deport the kids unless you really study the situation, kids that were born over here. Because it's very easy, Joe, to be over here on a rich country. And they have almost almost everything that you need, access to us. And when you go to a poor country, the kid that was used to have everything and suddenly gets into a poor country when it doesn't have this, it doesn't have that, is going to be, let's just say, post-traumatic. So it is a problem.
We're getting to the end here,
but
I can't let you go without asking a very obvious question. So anybody that's watching is going to be thinking, hold on. They say the ministers have said there's a pilot project, or there's a mechanism, or they can do this and they can do that. Do you guys have evidence for any of that?
Yes, we do.
You know what? If this was a court case, it would be a slam dunk. We have recorded evidence, we have emails, we have documents, we have all sorts of evidence. Comments, quotes made by the individuals to the group, to the committee.
Individuals, you mean ministers?
Ministers and MPs, absolutely.
Yes,
we got into this discussion.
But you didn't bring that today.
No, we didn't. We didn't ask us to bring it today. You asked us to come and talk about this issue. But we can bring it next time if you want.
Yeah,
Will
some
you come
other
again?
time we'll
Absolutely,
bring it.
absolutely.
Because we're just at the end of this program, and I hate to do this to you because you're getting my ire up, as they say. You know, this is the Irish part of me that gets angry. So what I'd like you to do is prepare that.
Yes,
and
sir.
If
We'll do
we'll
it.
book a date for next week,
Yeah.
and we'll go through that documentation together.
It's a deal.
Is that
It's a
fair
deal.
enough?
It's a fair
All right.
deal.
So listen, this is Manuel Alexander, President of the Undocumented Workers Committee, Joe Pimentel, Trusted Vice President, who are talking about an extremely hot topic, the topic of undocumented workers and the deportation of families that trusted the government, the separation of kids from their families, and the deportation of kids who are, to all intents and purposes, like their parents, integrated into our economy. So we invite you to write in to Corriere Media Group or Corriere Canadese or Go Live TV. Watch us on all social media. Go to our website, corriere.ca, corriere.com, and we bid you a return at our next engagement with Joe Pimentel and Manuel
It'll
Alexander.
be an honor, sir.
Gentlemen, thank you very much
Thank
for
you,
joining
Joe.
us. Until the next time.